There are moments in life when everything feels unbearably heavy. When you wake up and the weight of the day crashes down before you've even gotten out of bed. When the things that used to excite you now feel meaningless. When nothing feels worth the effort, and even joy, when it occasionally appears, feels distant, fleeting, fake. You may have a job, a roof over your head, even people around you, and still feel utterly hollow inside. The worst part is not even the sadness, it's the numbness, the quiet despair that comes when you've given up expecting things to get better. You move through life like a ghost, surviving but not really living. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone, and you're not broken. This feeling, as painful as it is not new. Even the most powerful man in the world once struggled with it. Marcus Aurelius, yes, the Roman emperor, commander of legions, ruler of the greatest empire on earth, knew what it meant to be weighed down by life. Despite his unimaginable power, he wasn't immune to grief, loneliness, or existential fatigue. He lost children to illness. He led during times of war and plague. He was betrayed, pressured, exhausted. Yet instead of collapsing under it all, he turned inward, not to escape, but to understand. He wrote to himself, privately, in what would later become Meditations, a personal diary of raw philosophical reflection. These writings weren't meant to impress anyone. They were survival notes, reminders to stay grounded, to endure, to keep going with purpose, even when everything felt meaningless. What gave him this strength wasn't religious faith or blind optimism, or the illusion that things would get better if he just waited long enough. It was philosophy, specifically Stoicism. A system of thought forged by people who had seen the worst life had to offer and still believed in the power of the human spirit to rise above it. Stoicism teaches that while we can't control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. That peace doesn't come from fixing the world, but from mastering the self. It doesn't deny pain, it teaches you how to carry it with dignity. It doesn't erase suffering, but it gives suffering a shape you can live with, maybe even grow from. It's about choosing strength over despair, clarity over chaos, action over helplessness. This video isn't about ancient history, it's about how that storm still rages today. It just takes different forms: depression, burnout, fear, emptiness. And Marcus's words, 2,000 years later, remain some of the clearest instructions we have on how to face that storm and come out stronger. Not happier in the naive sense, but resilient, centered, clear. The Stoic path isn't about escaping life, it's about engaging with it fully, without being crushed by it. There's a strange kind of suffering we bring on ourselves, not because of what happens to us, but because of the way we fight it. We replay events over and over in our minds, trying to rewrite the past. We argue with reality as if our frustration could somehow undo it. We say things like, "This isn't fair," or "It shouldn't have happened this way," or "Why me?" And though these thoughts feel justified in the moment, they do nothing but extend our pain. One of the first lessons Stoicism teaches us is this: pain is inevitable, but suffering, at least the kind we often feel, is something we create. It's not what happens that breaks us, it's our refusal to accept that it has happened. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He wrote, "Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears." What he meant wasn't that we should pretend bad things don't hurt, or that we should numb ourselves to injustice or grief. He meant that so much of what we feel, rage, bitterness, resentment, shame, is not coming from the event itself. It's coming from our interpretation of the event. It's coming from the meaning we attach to it. You didn't just lose your job. You decided that this loss defines your worth. You weren't just rejected. You concluded that you're unlovable. The injury is real, but the suffering is magnified because we refuse to let go of the story we're telling about it. We suffer because we demand that reality be different than it is, and that demand is never satisfied. When something bad happens, we tense up, we mentally push back, we resist the facts. But facts are facts, reality is what it is, and no amount of wishing or denial or complaining will change that. Stoicism isn't about being passive or indifferent, it's about clarity. When you stop resisting, you stop bleeding, not because the wound isn't there, but because you're not digging into it anymore. Think about how much of your mental exhaustion comes not from your circumstances, but from fighting them. You hate your job, but you keep waking up every day cursing the alarm clock instead of making a plan to leave. You resent the person who hurt you, but every time you think about them, you hand them power over your peace. You're angry that life didn't turn out the way you expected, but expectations are just stories you wrote in your head. The truth is, the more you argue with what is, the more you lose. The only way to begin healing is to stop demanding that reality behave according to your script. This doesn't mean giving up, it means facing what's in front of you without flinching. Marcus wasn't telling us to become emotionless robots. He was telling us that peace comes when we stop clinging to how we think things should be and start responding to how things are. This shift is powerful. It means that you can begin to regain control, not by changing the external world, but by changing your stance toward it. You can stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you can navigate with strength and wisdom. So how do we do that? How do we move from resistance to acceptance, especially when things genuinely hurt? First, we need to separate two things: what we can control and what we can't. This is the core of Stoicism. If you can control something, you act. If you can't, you let it go, not because you don't care, but because holding on is making you sick. Ask yourself right now, what am I resisting in my life? What fact am I refusing to accept? Is it a loss, a failure, a betrayal, a situation that feels unjust? A truth about yourself that you don't want to face? Write it down. Be honest. No one else has to see it. Just put the reality on paper. Then ask, can I control this? Can I change it? Fix it? Influence it? If the answer is yes, take one step toward doing so. Just one small, concrete action. Not a fantasy, not a wish, an actual step. If the answer is no, if it's something that already happened, something outside your influence, then stop giving it your energy. Stop reliving it. Stop feeding it with your attention. Let it be what it is. This is not easy, but it is simple, and that's why Stoicism endures. It strips away the noise. It tells you, focus on what's yours. Let the rest burn. Another practice that can help is what Marcus did. Write to yourself. Not in some perfect, filtered way, but raw, personal, unfiltered. Write down the thing that's hurting you, then respond to it from the perspective of a wiser, calmer version of yourself. What would that version say? Yes, this was painful. Yes, it was unfair, but it happened. And I'm still here, and I won't let it define me. This is how Marcus wrote. His meditations weren't essays. They were letters to himself, reminders, anchor points. You can do the same. It's easy to believe that acceptance is weakness, that to stop resisting is to lose. But in reality, acceptance is power. It means you are no longer at war with what already exists, and when the war ends, you have the energy to do something better, to build, to grow, to heal. Resisting reality drains you. Accepting it frees you. This doesn't mean your life will suddenly feel amazing, but it means the struggle becomes clearer, more honest. Instead of flailing in frustration, you gain focus. You stop wasting time fighting shadows and start walking a path forward. Stoicism doesn't promise a life without pain, but it does promise that you can suffer less and become stronger if you stop demanding that the world be something it isn't. So again, ask yourself, what am I resisting? What truth am I afraid to face? And what would happen if I simply allowed it to be true? Not agreed with it, not loved it, just allowed it. That's where Stoicism begins, and that's where healing begins. Not in denial, not in escape, but in the quiet, grounded acceptance of what is. Only from there can anything new grow. One of the greatest traps in life is spending all your time chasing things that will never satisfy you. Most people don't realize they're doing it until they've already burned years of their life in the wrong direction. You can climb the ladder of success only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall. You can earn the money, get the house, collect the compliments, and still feel empty inside. Why? Because the things you're chasing can't actually fill the hole you're trying to fill. Marcus Aurelius, who had more power, wealth, and prestige than almost anyone who's ever lived, knew this deeply. That's why he wrote, "Very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself." Coming from a Roman emperor, that sentence hits differently. This was a man who had access to everything, and yet he realized none of it was the source of true peace. The Stoics made a clear distinction between what they called externals and internals. Externals are things like money, fame, social approval, beauty, status, success, possessions. These things aren't inherently bad, but they are beyond your full control. They can be taken away, they fluctuate, you can do everything right and still not have them. Internals, on the other hand, are things like your character, your choices, your mindset, your integrity. These are the things that are always within your grasp, no matter what's happening around you. And according to the Stoics, these are the only things that actually matter. When you base your happiness on externals, you're building your life on sand. You're making your peace of mind dependent on things you can't control, and that's a guarantee for suffering. Think about it. If your self-worth depends on how many people like you, then your entire emotional state is vulnerable to strangers. If your happiness depends on making a certain amount of money, then you're putting your peace in the hands of the market, your boss, the economy. If your identity is tied to how attractive you are, then time itself becomes your enemy. These values don't anchor you, they own you. They turn you into a slave to things outside of you, and sooner or later they betray you. You see this everywhere. The person who looks perfect on social media but is quietly battling anxiety and depression. The workaholic who hits every career milestone and still feels deeply unfulfilled. The influencer who spends their life chasing validation, terrified of losing relevance. The millionaire who keeps grinding for more, thinking the next goal will finally make him feel complete. These are not failures of success, they are failures of values. People chasing the wrong things, because they never stop to ask why. And the worst part is that society actively encourages this. From the time we're young, we're conditioned to measure our worth by external metrics, grades, trophies, followers, income, beauty. We're taught that being liked is more important than being honest, that being rich is more important than being kind, that being impressive is more important than being good. No one tells us that all of these shiny things are fragile and fleeting, that they'll never make you feel whole. Not in a lasting way. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by luxury, but he spent his nights writing about discipline, humility, justice, and self-restraint. Because he knew the truth. The only real wealth is your character. Everything else is decoration. So what does it look like to value the right things? It means shifting your focus inward, not in a self-absorbed way, but in a grounded, disciplined way. It means measuring your life by your actions, not your outcomes, by your effort, not by applause. Did you act with honesty today? Did you keep your promises? Did you show up when it was hard? Did you hold your values even when no one was watching? These are the questions that matter, because they're the only ones you can answer fully, And when you start living this way, something strange happens. You begin to feel stable, not euphoric, not invincible, but calm, centered, unshakable. It's not that you stop caring about external things. You still need money to live. It's nice to be recognized. It feels good to be loved. But you stop depending on those things for your self-worth. You start to see them as bonuses, not foundations. And that shift changes everything. Suddenly, a setback doesn't destroy you. A rejection doesn't unravel your identity. A failure doesn't mean you're worthless. Because your worth was never built on those things in the first place. It was built on something deeper, something internal. So how do you start living this way, practically? First, become brutally honest about what you're actually valuing right now. Look at your behavior, not your beliefs. Where do you spend your time? What do you think about all day? What makes you feel good, and what makes you feel like a failure? Be honest. If you spend 5 hours a day on social media obsessing over likes and followers, you're valuing approval. If your mood rises and falls with your bank account, you're valuing money. If your sense of identity depends on what other people say about you, you're valuing reputation. There's no shame in this. We've all been conditioned this way, but you can't change what you don't admit. Next, start practicing the Stoic shift. When you catch yourself getting upset or anxious, ask, am I upset because I've done something wrong, or because something outside of me didn't go the way I wanted? If it's the latter, take a breath. Remind yourself, this isn't mine to control. What is mine is how I respond, how I carry myself, what I choose to do next. This simple shift done repeatedly can slowly rewire your entire sense of value. One helpful practice is to write down 3 internal wins at the end of each day. Not what you achieved, but how you acted. Did you stay calm in a situation that used to make you angry? Did you do the right thing when it would have been easier to lie? Did you keep going when you wanted to quit? These are the things that build character. These are the moments that shape who you are. And finally, surround yourself with reminders. The world will constantly try to sell you fake values. You need to build a fortress of real ones. Reread meditations. Put Stoic quotes where you can see them. Follow people who inspire your character, not just your ambition. Create an environment that nourishes the version of you that you actually want to become. Remember, a good life isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you cultivate. The person you become matters more than the things you get. You can't control the economy, the algorithm, or the opinions of others, but you can control your effort, your honesty, your kindness, your discipline. These things are yours, and no one can take them from you, not even death. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but what made him truly powerful wasn't his title, it was his clarity. He understood what was truly important, and he lived by it. That's the invitation of Stoicism. Not to be successful by the world's standards, but to become the kind of person who doesn't need success to feel whole. Because when you value the right things, you stop being a slave to the wrong ones. And in that space, you begin to feel something rare in this world, peace. Not the peace that comes from having everything go your way, but the peace that comes from knowing you'll be okay even when it doesn't. Your thoughts are not always telling you the truth. That's one of the most important things to realize if you want to break free from unhappiness. The mind can be a liar. It can convince you that you're worthless, that things will never get better, that you've already failed, that no one cares about you, that the worst-case scenario is just around the corner. And because these thoughts feel real, we believe them. But feelings are not facts. Just because something feels true doesn't mean it is. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. That's why he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, the quality of your mind shapes the quality of your life. If you constantly feed your mind with bitterness, fear, and self-hate, then your entire experience will be filtered through that darkness. But if you train your mind, if you learn to step back, question, and reframe, then you begin to change the way you experience reality. Marcus wasn't saying this as some kind of motivational quote. He was speaking from his own struggle. He faced betrayal, disease, war, family tragedy, yet he kept coming back to his mind as the battlefield that mattered most. The outer world could fall apart, but he knew that his inner world was still his responsibility. That's what makes Stoicism so powerful. It gives you back control of your experience, even when you have no control over your circumstances. The practice that Marcus used over and over again was cognitive reframing. It's the art of looking at a situation from a different angle, not in a way that lies to yourself, but in a way that reveals something deeper and more empowering. When something bad happened, Marcus would write down his thoughts about it. Then he'd challenge those thoughts. He'd strip them down to their essence, remove the drama, and ask, is this actually as bad as it seems? Am I seeing this clearly? Is my reaction helping me or hurting me? In doing so, he was training his mind to stay calm, clear, and focused, not swept away by fear or emotion. Here's the thing. Your emotions are almost always preceded by a thought. You feel anxious because you told yourself something might go wrong. You feel ashamed because you decided you failed. You feel angry because you interpreted someone's words as an insult. But all of these are interpretations. The event itself is neutral. Your mind adds the meaning. And once you learn to question that meaning, you start to break the spell. Let's take an example. Say someone you care about stops responding to your messages. Your immediate thought might be, they're ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. They don't like me anymore. That thought triggers anxiety, shame, maybe even resentment. But what if you caught that thought and challenged it? What if you asked, do I know for sure that this is about me? Could there be another explanation? Even if it is about me, is it something I can control? By doing this, you're not pretending everything is fine. You're simply refusing to let your mind run wild with assumptions. You're creating space between the stimulus and your response. That space is freedom. The Stoics called this reasoned choice, the ability to pause and think before reacting. It's a kind of mental martial art. Instead of letting your mind hit you with a punch, you learn to dodge, block, redirect. Over time, this becomes second nature. You stop being a passive victim of your thoughts and start becoming the observer of them. And when you observe your thoughts without immediately identifying with them, you gain power. You can decide which thoughts deserve your attention and which ones are just noise. This doesn't mean you'll never have negative thoughts again. You will. Everyone does. Even Marcus Aurelius, writing in his tent during war, filled pages with self-doubt, frustration, and fear. The point isn't to get rid of those thoughts, it's to learn how to handle them. When they show up, you say, there you are again. And instead of spiraling, you sit with them, you question them, you write them down. That's where thought journaling comes in. It's one of the most powerful tools you can use to reframe your mind. And it's simple. All you need is a pen and paper, or even a notes app on your phone. Here's how it works. Start by writing down a negative thought that's been bothering you. Be honest, no filter. For example, I'm never going to succeed. Now ask yourself, is this thought 100% true? What evidence do I have for and against it? What's a more balanced or useful way to look at this situation? If Marcus Aurelius were watching me right now, what would he tell me? Now rewrite the thought into a more rational, grounded version. For example, I've had setbacks, but I've also made progress. Success takes time. I don't need to panic, I just need to stay disciplined. Do this daily, or any time you feel overwhelmed. Over time, you'll notice something. Your thoughts will start to change on their own. Your brain will start to default to clarity instead of catastrophe. And that shift will change your emotions, your behavior, your life. Another way to practice reframing is to regularly strip events down to their bare facts. This is something Marcus did constantly. He'd look at a situation and reduce it to what was actually happening, without emotional color. For instance, if he got sick, he wouldn't write, "I'm suffering, this is awful." He'd write something like, "The body is experiencing illness. This is part of nature. It will pass, or it won't. Either way, I can handle it." That kind of detachment isn't cold. It's powerful. It gives you the mental distance to respond with reason instead of panic. You can practice this too. Whenever something upsets you, ask, "What actually happened? What are the raw facts, without my interpretation?" Then compare that to what your mind told you happened. Usually you'll see a huge gap. The facts are neutral. Your mind adds the story, and most of the time that story makes you feel worse than you need to. It's also helpful to remember this. Thoughts are just mental events. They're not commands, they're not prophecies. They're not necessarily true. They're just things that arise in the mind. Some are useful, many are not. You don't have to believe everything you think. You don't have to react to every mental impulse. You can observe, pause, question, and choose. That's what Marcus did. That's what Stoicism teaches. And that's what will change your life, if you practice it. So the next time your mind starts spinning with fear, doubt, or self-hate, don't just go along with it. Stop, breathe, ask, what am I thinking? Is it true? Is it helping me? Write it down, challenge it, reframe it. Choose a thought that strengthens you, not weakens you. That's the Stoic way. Not to suppress emotion, but to shape it through the power of reason. Not to live without struggle, but to struggle well, with clarity, dignity, and strength. You're not your thoughts. You're the one who sees them. And once you start choosing which ones to keep, you stop being a prisoner and start becoming free. One of the most universal sources of pain in life is loss. The loss of someone you love, the loss of a dream, the loss of a relationship, a job, a version of yourself. But loss is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It shows up in the background of your daily life. The creeping fear that something good will end, that something safe will be taken away, that change is coming whether you like it or not. We try to protect ourselves from this fear by clinging tighter to what we have. We try to freeze moments in time. We try to make people stay. We try to hold on to feelings, identities, routines, as if we can somehow outsmart the passing of time. But we can't. Everything you love will eventually change or disappear or end. And if you build your life on the illusion that it won't, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. He lived every day with the awareness that everything is temporary, and instead of letting that crush him, he let it clarify his life. He wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." That's a hard thing to accept. We usually see loss as a tragedy, something wrong, something to be resisted or avoided, but Marcus is offering a different perspective. Loss is not a mistake. It's not some rare interruption of how life is supposed to be. It is how life is. It's not the exception, it's the rule. And when you begin to see it that way, you start to loosen your grip. You stop clinging to the illusion of permanence. You begin to move with the flow of life instead of against it. Everything in nature changes. The seasons shift, the leaves fall, the sun rises and sets. People grow old, children grow up, bodies age, minds evolve. Even the cells in your body are constantly dying and renewing. The universe is in motion. Nothing stays fixed. The more you resist that truth, the more you suffer, because you're demanding that life give you something it can't give. control over the uncontrollable. But if you can stop fighting that truth, if you can surrender to it, then change becomes less frightening. It becomes part of the rhythm of life, and even loss becomes something you can carry without collapsing. This doesn't mean you shouldn't care. Stoicism doesn't ask you to stop loving people or enjoying life. It asks you to love and enjoy with your eyes open, to appreciate everything fully while you have it, knowing it could be gone tomorrow. That awareness doesn't make life darker, it makes it richer. It forces you to be present, to not take things for granted, to treat every moment like a gift instead of a guarantee. Think of someone you love, a friend, a partner, a parent, a child. Now imagine that today is the last time you'll ever see them, that this conversation, this hug, this moment, you'll never get it again. Not to be dramatic, not to scare yourself, but to remember how fragile and precious everything is. Suddenly, your attention sharpens. You listen more deeply. You speak more kindly. You hold them tighter. That's what embracing impermanence does. It wakes you up. Now think of something you lost. Maybe someone passed away. Maybe a relationship ended. Maybe a chapter of your life closed unexpectedly. You grieved. You still might be grieving. That's okay. Grief is natural. It means you cared. But underneath that grief is also a hidden truth. You had something worth losing. You got to experience it. You got to feel something real. That's a gift. And now, even though it's gone, you can carry it forward, not as pain, but as meaning, as growth, as love that changed shape but didn't disappear. The goal isn't to become cold or detached. It's to let go of the need for life to stay the same, the need for people to stay, the need for everything to go according to your plan, because the truth is, your plan was never in charge. Life unfolds on its own terms, and the more you align yourself with that reality, the more peace you'll feel, even when it hurts. So how do you begin to live this way practically? Start by noticing how you respond to change. Do you panic when routines shift? Do you cling tightly to people out of fear they'll leave? Do you resist endings even when they're necessary? Awareness is the first step. Just start observing. Notice where your fear of impermanence is creating suffering. Then remind yourself nothing is truly yours, not in the sense of ownership. Everything you have, your body, your relationships, your status, your possessions, can be taken from you. And yet while you have them, you can love them deeply. Use them well. Be present with them fully. This paradox is what makes life both painful and beautiful. You have to love while letting go. A powerful way to internalize this is through a short acceptance meditation. It doesn't need to be complex. Just take a moment, right now, if you can. Sit comfortably, close your eyes or soften your gaze, take a deep breath in through your nose, and slowly exhale through your mouth. Let your body relax. Now silently repeat to yourself, everything is changing. Nothing is mine to keep, but while I have it, I will love it fully. Let these words sink in. Feel the truth of them. You might notice resistance. That's okay. Just breathe. You're not trying to get rid of your emotions. You're trying to make space for reality. Let yourself feel gratitude for what you've had. Let yourself feel sadness if something is gone. Don't push anything away. Just sit with it. Let it be. Now bring to mind something in your life that's changing, or something you're afraid to lose. It could be a person, a job, a part of yourself. Imagine holding it in your hands, and then gently imagine opening your hands. Let it rest there, not clutched, not trapped, but held freely. This is what it means to love without attachment, to care deeply without needing to control. Do this often. You don't have to wait for loss to practice letting go. You can prepare your heart for change by opening it every day. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly. That's how he stayed grounded. That's how he led with strength, even when everything around him was crumbling. So many people live in fear of loss because they've never learned how to make peace with it. But the truth is, the more you accept impermanence, the more alive you become. You stop sleepwalking through life. You stop wasting time. You start speaking the truth. You start showing up. because you know this moment will never come again. And when something ends, you don't fall apart. You bow. You bow to the passing of time. You bow to the pain. You bow to the mystery of life that gives and takes without explanation. And then you stand back up, not bitter, not broken, but deeper, wiser, more human. That's what Stoicism offers. Not a way to avoid loss, but a way to live with it, to feel it fully without letting it destroy you, to grieve, to let go, and to keep walking. Not because you're numb, but because you're strong, because you've seen the truth and you're still here, still breathing, still capable of joy. So let go, not with force, not with anger, but with softness, with reverence, with trust in the rhythm of life that holds us all. Nothing lasts, but everything leaves its mark. Let that be enough. Let that be beautiful. One of the most toxic habits of the modern mind is the constant comparison to other people. It's subtle, it's sneaky, and it's everywhere. You see someone with a better body, a nicer apartment, a more exciting relationship, more followers, more money, more talent, and suddenly, without even realizing it, you begin to feel like you're falling behind. You begin to question your own path, your own progress. You might even feel ashamed of things you were perfectly content with 5 minutes ago. What changed? Nothing real. Just the lens you're looking through. And that's the danger of comparison. It warps your vision. It poisons your peace. It turns life into a never-ending scoreboard where you are always losing. The Stoics saw this clearly even 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius warned about envy, resentment, and letting other people's lives disturb your own inner balance. He wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger and grief than the causes of them?" In other words, what hurts us isn't just what happens, it's the mental patterns we fall into after it happens. You see someone else succeed, and instead of being inspired, you feel inferior. Instead of focusing on your own growth, you spiral into self-doubt. The actual trigger might be small, but the suffering it causes expands inside your mind, becoming far worse than the event itself. That's the power of unchecked comparison. It turns minor observations into major emotional storms. At its core, comparison is a form of ego. It says, I need to be better than others to feel good about myself. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. It says, your worth is not relative. It is not earned by outperforming others. It comes from your character, your intentions, your choices. Marcus never measured his life by how he ranked against other emperors or philosophers or generals. He measured it by how well he was living according to his principles. Was he just? Was he disciplined? Was he kind? Was he present? That was enough, because that's all you can control. Everything else, what people think of you, how they compare you to others, how far ahead someone else seems, is outside your circle of influence. The problem today is that we live in a world where comparison is almost impossible to escape. Every time you open your phone, you're bombarded with curated glimpses into other people's lives, edited, filtered, designed to impress. You're not seeing their reality, you're seeing a highlight reel. But your brain doesn't know that. It compares anyway, and slowly, quietly, you start to feel small. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your attention has been hijacked. You've outsourced your self-worth to a world that's designed to make you feel inadequate. So how do you escape this trap? How do you stop letting other people's lives dictate how you feel about your own? The first step is awareness. You need to catch yourself in the act of comparison. The next time you feel that pang of envy or self-doubt after scrolling, pause. Ask yourself, what exactly triggered this feeling? Was it someone's success, their appearance, their lifestyle? Name it. Then ask, why does this bother me? What belief do I have that's making this feel personal? You'll usually find a hidden story like, if they're doing better than me, then I must be failing. Or, if they have what I want, then there's less for me. These are lies. Life is not a zero-sum game. Someone else's beauty doesn't diminish yours. Someone else's success doesn't block your path. Someone else's timeline is not your deadline. Once you've identified the false story, rewrite it. Replace it with something true and empowering. For example, I don't need to match anyone's journey. I'm growing at my own pace. Their success is not my failure. Do this every time comparison creeps in. Over time, it rewires your mental habits. You stop automatically assuming you're behind. You stop letting other people's lives define your value. You return to your own lane. The second step is to reclaim your attention, because comparison lives in distraction. The more time you spend watching other people live, the less time you spend actually living your own life. This is why a social media detox isn't just a trendy self-help tip, it's a philosophical reset. You don't have to quit forever, but taking intentional breaks can show you just how much of your mental energy has been drained by constant exposure to other people's curated realities. Try this. Go one full day without social media. No Instagram, no TikTok, no YouTube shorts, no scrolling. Pay attention to how often you reach for your phone out of habit. Pay attention to what happens in your mind when you're not constantly comparing yourself to others. You might feel uncomfortable at first. That's normal. But underneath that discomfort is a kind of quiet, a kind of clarity. When you're not bombarded with other people's lives, you start to hear your own voice again. You start to remember what matters to you, not what's trending. If a full day feels like too much, start smaller. Block off the first and last hour of your day as comparison-free zones. No scrolling in bed, no checking likes or messages as soon as you wake up. These are sacred times. Use them to reconnect with yourself. Read, reflect, write, go outside. Do anything that brings you back to your own experience. That's where your life is, not in someone else's feed. The third step is to redefine success on your own terms. Because a lot of comparison comes from chasing goals that aren't even yours. Maybe you think you want a certain lifestyle because you've seen it glamorized 1,000 times. But do you really? Do you actually value that life? Or are you just chasing what others have been trained to desire? Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to strip things down to their essence. Don't be hypnotized by appearances. Ask, what is this thing really? And do I actually want it? Create your own definition of a good life. One that aligns with your values. Maybe it's not flashy, maybe it's not impressive to others, but if it's honest and fulfilling to you, then it's enough. When you're clear on what you value, you stop being pulled in 100 directions. You stop measuring your life with someone else's ruler. Finally, practice gratitude, not as a cliché, but as a discipline. Every day, write down 3 things that are already good in your life. Not things you hope to have, not things other people admire. Things that are real, present, and meaningful to you. This simple act shifts your focus from what you lack to what you already have. And when your eyes are open to the gifts in front of you, it becomes much harder to obsess over what others seem to have. Marcus Aurelius wasn't a Stoic because he was emotionless. He was a Stoic because he trained his mind to stay rooted in what mattered. He knew that envy, comparison, and ego were distractions. They pulled you away from your center. They made you forget who you are. But when you return to yourself, when you live according to your values, on your timeline, with your attention focused on what you can control, you begin to feel something rare: contentment. Not because you've won the race, but because you've stopped running one you were never meant to be in. So stop looking sideways. Stop measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. You don't need to be ahead. You don't need to be impressive. You need to be real. You need to be grounded. You need to be you. And that will always be enough, if you let it. There are times in life when the pain becomes so loud, so constant, that you start to question what the point of it all is. You get out of bed and wonder why. You go to work, go through the motions, talk to people, but everything feels hollow, like you're just pretending to live. The suffering doesn't even need to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just a dull ache, an invisible weight. You feel directionless, disconnected. You're not necessarily falling apart, but you've lost your why, and once that happens, it becomes harder and harder to keep going. Because humans don't just need comfort or pleasure, we need purpose. We need to feel like our existence means something. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He lived in a time of war, sickness, betrayal, political pressure. Yet he carried an enormous burden every day without giving in to despair. He didn't escape into distractions. He didn't whine about his responsibilities. Instead, he anchored himself in purpose. A purpose not based on glory or pleasure, but on service and integrity. He wrote, "Do every act of your life as if it were your last." Not as a threat or a fear tactic, but as a call to urgency, a reminder that each day is a chance to live with intention. That meaning isn't something you wait to find, it's something you choose to create through action. For Marcus, life was not about chasing happiness, it was about fulfilling his role as a father, a leader, a philosopher, a human being. He believed that everyone has a duty, not in the sense of being forced, but in the sense of rising to a higher standard. That duty is to contribute, to help, to live with courage, to hold yourself to something greater than impulse or comfort, even when you feel like giving up. And that's the thing about purpose. It doesn't make the pain disappear, but it gives the pain a direction. When you know why you're struggling, the struggle becomes bearable. When your suffering is attached to something meaningful, it changes shape. It becomes a kind of fuel. Marcus didn't wake up every morning excited to lead a crumbling empire through disease and war, but he showed up because he knew his role mattered, because he knew that giving up would only make things worse, because he believed that even the smallest acts of discipline, honesty, and justice were worth doing, no matter how he felt inside. In today's world, purpose has been hijacked. People talk about finding your purpose as if it's some magical moment where the clouds part and the perfect path reveals itself. But Stoicism says something different. It says, you don't find purpose, you choose it, you live it, even when you're confused, even when you're hurting, especially when things are falling apart. Purpose is not a big abstract goal. It's a decision you make right now to show up with intention, to bring value, to act with integrity, to care about something more than your own comfort. So how do you find purpose when you feel like nothing matters? How do you take action when you're drowning in apathy or pain? Start small. Don't wait for motivation or some big revelation. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today that makes the world slightly better? That could be showing up for someone who needs you, doing your job with care, even if it's not your dream job, keeping a promise to yourself, being kind to a stranger, creating something, cleaning something, learning something. Any act of effort that aligns with your values. Because the truth is, meaning is built in the doing, not the thinking. You won't feel clear before you move. You'll feel clear because you moved. Marcus believed that every action mattered, not because anyone was watching, but because your actions reflect who you are. If today were your last day, would you be proud of how you treated others, how you carried yourself, how you used your time? You don't need to obsess over death, but keeping it in mind strips away the nonsense. It reminds you that you don't have forever, that each choice counts, that life is short, yes, but that means every moment is precious. One practical way to live this mindset is through daily intention setting. It's simple but powerful. Each morning, take a moment, just a few minutes, to reflect. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? What values do I want to embody? What do I want to give rather than just take? Don't make a huge to-do list. Focus on the how, not just the what. For example, I will face discomfort with courage. I will treat others with patience and respect. I will speak the truth even when it's hard. I will not waste time on things I can't control. I will do one thing today that aligns with my higher self. Write these down if you can. Keep them in your pocket. Reread them throughout the day. This small ritual helps you anchor yourself. It brings you back to your why. And when pain or boredom or doubt shows up, and it will, you'll have something to hold on to, something to remind you, this moment still matters. I still have a choice. The beauty of Stoic purpose is that it doesn't require external success. You don't need a perfect job, a huge following, or endless inspiration. You just need a willingness to live with depth, to care, to try, to stand for something, even when no one sees it. Marcus knew he couldn't control what people said about him. He couldn't stop war, or disease, or loss, but he could control how he lived, and that was enough. Maybe you're going through something right now. Maybe your life feels like a mess. That's okay. Purpose doesn't require a perfect setting. In fact, the darker things get, the more important your purpose becomes, because it's what keeps you from giving up. It's what turns your suffering into strength. It's what makes even the smallest acts meaningful. Washing the dishes becomes an act of discipline. Getting out of bed becomes an act of courage. Listening to a friend becomes an act of service. These aren't small things. These are the building blocks of a meaningful life. The Stoics didn't believe in running from pain. They believed in walking through it, with your head up, your heart open, and your values intact. They believed that duty and service weren't burdens. They were the path to resilience, to show up not because it's easy, but because it's right. That's real strength. That's real purpose. So if you feel lost, if you feel like nothing matters, don't wait for clarity to strike. Start acting with purpose, even if you don't feel it yet. Do something small and meaningful today. Help someone, honor your word, create beauty, choose honesty. Hold yourself to a higher standard, then do it again tomorrow, and the next day. Over time, you'll notice something. Your pain is still there, but so is your dignity. Your sorrow still exists, but now it has weight. It has meaning. You're not just surviving anymore. You're living on purpose. And that, as Marcus Aurelius shows us, is how you turn despair into strength. Not by escaping it, but by rising inside it, one action at a time. There is one truth we all live with, whether we admit it or not. We are going to die. Everyone we know will die. Everything we love will eventually come to an end. This truth is so terrifying to most people that they spend their lives trying to ignore it. They distract themselves with noise. They fill their calendars with obligations and their minds with entertainment. They chase money, validation, comfort, anything to avoid sitting with the reality of their own mortality. But the Stoics didn't run from death. They turned toward it. They used it, not as a source of fear, but as a source of freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote one of the most powerful reminders of this truth. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. It wasn't meant to depress you. It was meant to wake you up. Because when you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it. You stop pretending you have forever. You stop putting off what matters. You stop saying someday and start living now. Modern life teaches us to avoid death. We push old age to the edges of society. We sterilize death behind hospital curtains. We act like we'll live forever, but death is not the enemy. The Stoics believed it's actually the greatest teacher we have. If you let it, the thought of death can give you clarity, courage, and a deep sense of gratitude. Because when you really accept that life is short, you also realize how precious it is. You start to see each moment not as something ordinary, but as something sacred. Think about how much of your unhappiness comes from taking life for granted. You complain about your job, your body, your relationships, your daily routine, not because they're unbearable, but because you've forgotten how fragile and temporary everything is. But imagine if you really remembered that this could all be gone tomorrow. Would you still waste hours scrolling? Would you still avoid the difficult conversation? Would you still hold grudges, live in fear, stay small, play it safe? Probably not, because death reminds you what actually matters and what doesn't. And this is the paradox. When you remember death, you don't become morbid. You become more alive. You love deeper. You listen more closely. You speak more honestly. You stop sleepwalking through your days. You take risks. You say, I love you. You forgive. You show up. Because there's no guarantee you'll get another chance. This is the heart of memento mori, which means remember that you must die. It's not a threat. It's a call to wake up, to live fully, to live honestly, to live without regret. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about death to scare himself. He did it to anchor himself. When he was tempted to waste time, to get caught up in status or vanity or distraction, he reminded himself, you don't know how much longer you have. That simple reminder helped him return to what really mattered, and it can do the same for you. Start with this. Take a moment to picture your own death, not in a dramatic way, just honestly. One day, you will exhale for the last time. You don't know when. It could be decades from now, or it could be next week. You won't be able to bring anything with you, not your money, not your followers, not your ego. All that will be left is how you lived, the choices you made, the people you touched, the kind of person you were. Now ask yourself, if today were your last day, what would you regret not doing? What words are you holding back? What risks are you avoiding? What dreams are you postponing? What kind of person do you wish you had the courage to become? These are not abstract questions. These are the compass for your life. Because when you get to the end, it won't matter how popular you were. It won't matter how many things you collected. What will matter is whether you lived fully or hid, whether you gave your love or withheld it, whether you used your time with intention or let it slip through your fingers. If you want to make this real, try this simple memento mori exercise. Find a quiet place. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let your body relax. Then, gently bring your attention to this thought. I am going to die. I don't know when, but it is certain. Say it to yourself a few times, slowly, not to scare yourself, but to remember the truth. Now think about today. If this were your last day alive, how would you want to show up? What would you change about how you move through this moment? Let yourself feel that. Sit with it. Don't run away. Stay with the weight of your own mortality until it softens you, until it brings you closer to the present. You can also try journaling with this prompt every morning. If today were my last day, how would I live it? Don't write down your schedule. Write your intentions. Who do you want to be today? How do you want to treat people? What fear do you want to let go of? What truth do you want to speak? This practice doesn't make you anxious. It makes you awake. It keeps your life aligned with what actually matters. You can even keep a physical reminder of death nearby. Some people wear a memento mori ring, or keep a skull on their desk, or write Marcus's quote somewhere they'll see it daily. Not to be dark, but to stay rooted, to remember what's real. Death isn't something to be feared, it's something to be understood. Because once you accept it, you stop living a half-life. You stop waiting for some distant future to finally be happy, or brave, or whole. You realize that the time is now, not next year, not after you fix everything, not once you've achieved some perfect version of yourself. Now, this moment, exactly as it is your life. And one day, it will end. That's not meant to make you sad. It's meant to make you grateful. You still have time. You're still breathing. You still have a chance to turn things around, to forgive, to love, to speak your truth, to live with integrity, to do the thing you've been afraid to do. As long as you are alive, it is not too late. Marcus Aurelius didn't just think about death, he used it as a tool, as a motivator, as a compass. And so can you. Not to become obsessed with dying, but to become obsessed with living. Fully, boldly, without wasting your time on things that don't matter. So remember, you could leave life right now. Let that thought shape your next conversation. Let it guide your next choice. Let it remind you to stop waiting. Because this isn't a dress rehearsal, this is it. And if you can learn to live with death in your awareness, not as a fear, but as a companion, you will finally begin to live the way you were always meant to. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more waiting for permission. You are going to die, but right now, you are still alive. And that is a gift. Use it well.